On paper, child support is a formula, an objective, court-approved mechanism designed to secure a child's well-being. It is supposed to be fair, equitable, and based on a calculation of income, custody time, and child-related needs. Judges, mediators, and attorneys are tasked with translating these numbers into orders meant to serve the best interests of the children. But in real life, especially when one parent is a narcissist, those numbers can become weapons. In the early 2000s, the system still operated under heavily gendered assumptions. Mothers were often granted residential custody by default, and fathers were expected to provide financial support without equal authority, input, or benefit of the doubt. When mothers claimed to have concerns, even vague ones, about consistency or reliability, state agencies often responded by intervening, not to investigate or equalize, but to enforce a payment structure through formal channels. In John and Angela's case, this was particularly appalling. Both were entrepreneurs with comparable earnings and waived alimony. There was no financial disparity requiring redress, only a narrative to be controlled. Angela successfully requested that John's child support be routed through the state collection agency, ensuring regularity and accountability, but only for him. Her share of the parental responsibility, though equal in theory, was never monitored, formalized, or enforced. And so began a pattern that would persist for years. John paid, Angela framed. Note, support did end for John because he elected not to reduce amount as each child entered adulthood. Let's break this down into a concrete monthly example. Estimated total monthly child expenses for $1,000, excluding mortgage, which John also continued to pay. John's health insurance contribution, $750 per month. Coverage for all 3 children. Court-ordered monthly support payment, $1,250 per month, routed through the state collection system. Total contribution from John, $2,000 per month. Angela's expected contribution, by logic, fairness, or ethical reciprocity, should have been the remaining $2,000, but there was no order, oversight, or consequence tied to her role. If she covered additional expenses, they weren't visible. If she withheld resources, there was no accountability. Her position remained fluid, undefined, but always righteous. During a fall custody weekend, John's children casually mentioned that their mother had instructed them to ask him for jackets and school shoes. He complied without hesitation, taking them to the mall, buying high-quality coats and footwear, ensuring that his kids felt both warm and cared for. It was a normal parental response, born of love, not logistics. But the situation felt off. John knew he was already contributing more than his share. Was this an oversight, a misunderstanding, or a setup? He reached out to his attorney, who sent a respectful reminder to Angela's legal counsel. The existing support structure accounted for these types of expenses. Asking for duplicates wasn't just financially unfair, it muddied the waters. The following Tuesday, John arrived to pick up the kids. They handed him the coats and shoes, quietly saying, "Mom said these belong to you, we have to give them back." No argument, no confrontation, just a symbolic rejection, delivered through children, designed to wound, confuse, and control. Over the years, the pattern deepened. There were no direct accusations that John wasn't providing enough. Instead, there were vague insinuations. "Dad didn't help with that. I had to put it all on my card again." He's supposed to do more. The children heard these comments. They didn't always understand them, but they absorbed them, and that's the danger. John began to notice his children working more hours after school, even while he was covering expenses. He wondered if they had been told he wasn't stepping up, despite making regular court-order payments and often going above and beyond. Angela may have contributed financially, but her real investment was in perception, and perception is where a narcissist thrives. As the children grew older, support needs evolved. College dorms, used cars, travel expenses, medical copays. These new phases required flexible, good-faith negotiations between co-parents. John tried. He offered assistance, made verbal commitments, delivered on promises. But time and again, Angela would reinterpret the agreement, deny the conversation, claim John had fallen short. What had once been cooperative turned contentious. Angela weaponized memory ambiguity, and her children's partial understanding of adult agreements. Verbal promises were twisted. Written ones were ignored. Contributions were erased from the narrative. In this way, even support became a tool of alienation. When it comes to narcissistic abuse, money is never just money. It's leverage. It's image control. It's emotional currency. Angela's handling of child support revealed core narcissistic behaviors. Financial gaslighting, undermining John's documented contributions while subtly feeding the impression that he wasn't doing enough. Narrative control, using the children as intermediaries, returning gifts, delivering messages, seeding doubts, all while avoiding direct conflict, counterparenting. Instead of co-parenting, Angela created a structure of resistance, contradiction, and correction, designed not to help the children, but to discredit the father. In family court, child support is calculated with formulas, but in homes dominated by narcissistic control, it's calculated in guilt, confusion, and emotional manipulation. John was not just supporting his children. He was also fighting a silent war to preserve his reputation, protect their perception of him, and maintain his emotional footing in a system designed to favor surface-level compliance over deeper truths. Under the cold, institutional glow of fluorescent lights, John and Angela sat in tense silence across from two court-appointed mediators, one a licensed psychologist, the other a counselor trained in high-conflict custody dynamics. They were there to finalize a practical co-parenting plan amidst their intensifying divorce proceedings. One point of agreement seemed reassuring. The children would finish the current academic year at their existing school, which was located midway between both parent homes. The decision made sense. Continuity, familiarity, and academic stability were essential, especially during such a chaotic life transition. John agreed without hesitation, even offering to shoulder half the transportation duties. Angela agreed to, or at least pretended to. The terms were documented, signed, and submitted to both legal teams. John left the meeting feeling cautiously optimistic, believing that this marked a step toward shared responsibility, and perhaps even a new era of functional parenting. But behind the scenes, Angela was already making other plans. Within just a few short weeks, Angela unilaterally withdrew the children from their school and re-enrolled them in a different one, closer to her new residence and farther from John. She offered no advance notice, no discussion, no concern for the emotional whiplash it might cause their children. What had been presented as mutual agreement in mediation was, in reality, a stalling tactic, a formality Angela never intended to follow. The message was loud and clear. Control matters more than cooperation. To make matters worse, Angela told the staff at the original school that John had no parental rights, prompting administrators to block his access to academic updates and communication channels. Only after his attorney intervened were the errors corrected. Once informed of the truth, the teachers and vice principal issued heartfelt apologies and pledged their support, openly expressing their discomfort with what had transpired. But the damage was done. Another trusted institution had been temporarily weaponized against him. Meanwhile, John's youngest daughter remained in daycare at a church-affiliated facility located roughly halfway between the two homes. On his scheduled days, John would faithfully arrive by noon for pickup. For weeks, he was often the first car in line, waiting patiently as the children finished their outdoor play. But then one fateful afternoon, traffic congestion due to a multi-car pileup on the interstate caused John to be late by less than 15 minutes. Unable to reach him immediately, the daycare staff contacted Angela. She responded not with concern, but with accusation. The daycare director soon emailed John, harshly implying neglect and irresponsibility. The wording was abrupt, disciplinary, and disproportionate to the delay. John replied with immediacy and professionalism, detailing the traffic incident, his past punctuality, and his ongoing communications with Angela. He asked why none of that history had been considered, why one isolated incident had sparked such a harsh rebuke. The director responded with a noticeably softer tone. She confessed in a private follow-up call that her emotional reaction had been based on Angela's characterization of the situation. "Honestly, I was misled," she said. "Angela made it sound like this was habitual, like you'd abandoned her. What should have been a moment of understanding had instead become an ambush, another opportunity for Angela to manipulate perceptions and solidify her victimhood narrative." Angela soon changed daycares, placing the youngest child in another religious-based facility even farther from John's home. The reasons were unclear. Perhaps the first director grew wise, or perhaps Angela simply wanted to reset her storyline in a fresh environment. The pattern, however, remained unchanged. On one occasion, John was delayed again, this time returning from a client meeting in a nearby city. As he exited the building and turned his phone back on, a voicemail from a new daycare's assistant director greeted him. But this message was different. In the background, John could unmistakably hear Angela's voice, coaching the staff member on what to say, feeding lines, suggesting phrases, building a scripted complaint. This wasn't just hearsay. This was evidence. Unbeknownst to Angela, John's attorney happened to be an elder at the very church that oversaw the daycare. When John shared the voicemail, the attorney immediately recognized Angela's voice and brought the matter to the attention of the daycare leadership. The fallout was swift. A formal apology was issued by the director and the church administration. A written record was made, noting that Angela had influenced staff communication through misrepresentation. Once again, an institution had been pulled into her web of control, until the truth exposed it. Angela's false reports to educational institutions, both public schools and private daycare centers, represent a chilling use of covert psychological warfare designed not only to harm John's reputation, but to distort his children's perception of him. Her tactics reveal multiple narcissistic strategies. Pathological control, agreements made in good faith, especially those signed through court mediation, were immediately broken, not for the children's benefit, but to preserve authority and dominance. Crisis fabrication, one-off understandable events, such as a minor delay in pickup, were reframed as patterns of neglect, used as justification to paint John as unreliable or even dangerous. Triangulation and flying monkeys, teachers, daycare staff, administrators, even church leaders were drawn into Angela's false narrative. They acted on her behalf, unaware that they were being used as instruments of manipulation, gaslighting, and plausible deniability. When questioned, Angela would pivot, "I never said that," or "I was just worried," maintaining the illusion of innocence while sowing confusion and mistrust. The end result? A slow but devastating corrosion of John's relationship with his children. Educational milestones were missed, classroom updates were withheld, and the children absorbed distorted messages about who their father was. Messages delivered not through open hostility, but subtle exclusion. These weren't just lies. They were foundational shifts, moments that rewrote family history. The damage inflicted by false school reports often goes unnoticed in custody battles. There are no shouting matches, no courtroom transcripts, no physical injuries. But the outcome can be even more destructive. When a child is taught, intentionally or by implication, that one parent is unreliable, indifferent, or unworthy, it creates a schism in their identity. The very figure who helped raise and nurture them becomes a stranger, unfamiliar, undeserving, and unsafe. And that's the cruel genius of narcissistic alienation. It doesn't erase the other parent. It rewrites them. John wasn't just excluded from a school. He was erased from the storyline.